Drew, Labor Day weekend or Labor Day week, short week coming up. How you doing, man?
I'm good, brother. How are you, Kip?
Good. It's we're recording this on a Monday. Not that you guys need to know that, but I'm out here at the office in the podcast studio, what I call it, and I'm the only one here, and it feels kind of weird, kind of nice actually, nice and quiet.
I'm actually at my office too. I'm in the basement in one of the conference rooms, and yes, it is kind of eerie and quiet,
No
but
one's around.
it's all good. It's all good.
I love it, man. Well, thanks for stepping in and doing the Ask Me Anything. We'll be fielding some questions today from the Iron Council. We have a handful of Iron Council members that submitted some questions, and then the rest of the questions we'll be fielding from our Facebook group. To join us on Facebook, go to facebook.com/group/Order of Man. And roughly in about 10 days, the Iron Council will be open for enrollment. So stay tuned if that's something that you've been on the fence. Decide so you can take action in roughly about 10 days. And we'll see you on the inside of the Iron Council. Drew is actually one of our battle team leaders in the Iron Council. We talked about this last time we were on the podcast together, but Drew was my battle team leader when I joined the Iron Council. I don't know how long ago that was, 5, maybe 6 years ago, a while ago.
At least. So yeah. Battle Team Alpha. Kip was a member of Alpha back in the day.
Yeah. OG, old times, man. It is not to derail too much, but man, it has grown. Like I remember we had this spreadsheet and it had like 100 names on it, and that's kind of how we managed membership.
Right.
I don't know. It's crazy how much things have grown, how many members we have in the Iron Council now. I mean, it's a little sad because you don't know everybody anymore. It's impossible. It's really hard to do.
I think Chris Gatchko posted in one of our channels in the Foundry the other day, a picture of a spreadsheet of the original handful of teams. And it's funny to think about because when I joined the Iron Council, I was the 13th guy to join the Iron Council. So, 6-7 years ago now. And seeing that spreadsheet was like, oh my gosh, we have like 5 teams and there's like 10 guys per team or something like that. And prior to even then, we didn't even have battle teams. And now you look at, I don't even know, 1,000+ members. And it's pretty wild to see. It's hard to try and, communicate with everybody, but it's nice to see all these guys coming in and more importantly, Kip, what they're doing with their own lives and changing is just really incredible. Watching the stories on the feed and seeing these guys post it's amazing.
Well, and it's so neat to think back. I left Alpha. I took over Battle Team Echo from Lex, which was big shoes to fill. I felt very intimidated by doing that back in the day. And since then, it's cool to see how many guys that were on my team that are now mentors and battle team leaders, and how much of a voice they have in serving other men of the Iron Council. And it's just, I don't know, to your point, it's inspiring. It reminds me of the importance of what we're doing, to see kind of the success of these guys and what they've accomplished. One of the questions when we have a new potential battle team leader, I go through the screening process and I'll have a call. And usually one of the questions I ask is, what have you gotten out of the Iron Council? I think one of a really important leadership trait, it's not really a trait, but a leadership quality is modeling performance, right? Mm-hmm. If we're going to lead from the front, we have to be the model of what that looks like. And so I try to ask those questions of these potential battle team leaders of like, what has the Iron Council done for you, right? What success have you had? And it just wows me in regards to how much these guys have come in, got some structure, banded with their brothers, got that form of accountability, and is just killing it in multiple areas of their lives. So it's good. It's a testament, Drew, for you being in here in the IC for so long and serving other guys. And I don't know, it's a testament of the need of what Ryan has created. So it's just an honor to be on this path with him and with all you guys.
100%.
All right, let's hop into this. So our first question, like I said, we're going to field questions from the Iron Council. To learn more about the IC, or if you want to sign up for those newsletters, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Our first question, Reese Carter, one of our battle team leaders, or actually one of our battle team mentors. If your vision statement for yourself is a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, so an amazing vision statement, what is your current state at the time of coming into the Iron Council? Can you be specific to your individual quadrants, any one greater than the other? Maybe you were fit but broke and divorced, imbalances mainly to speak of is kind of what he's looking for. And then ultimately, what is your current state now?
Great question, Reese. Reese always brings good questions in. Look, I think when you join the Iron Council, you are coming because you have realized that you need to get some order, and you need to get your life as a man in proper shape. You may not have a vision statement at all. You may not even know what a vision statement is. You may have some ideas and some goals and things of that nature, but you don't know how to get there. And that's one of the reasons you come into the Iron Council. If you have a perfect vision statement now, I would venture to say that almost everybody that comes and joins us inside the Iron Council has no order to their vision whatsoever. They're trying to just figure it out. You need to do an inventory to get to his point about, which quadrant of the battle plan makes the most sense or is most important. You've got to do an inventory with where you're at in life. If you are really fit, but you're broke, you probably need to put some effort and energy into your business, your job, and what you have going on. Maybe spending 10 hours a day in the gym 6 days a week isn't the best thing to be doing. It sounds like you have a pretty good hold on your fitness. So why don't you focus on your financial fitness now? You really just have to get vulnerable with yourself, and you need to write it all down, make that map, and understand where you're at and where you need to go. And then start focusing on those simple things, just one thing. It doesn't need to be, you can't focus on all of it. James Clear has a great concept around 1% better every day. If you're not familiar with it, just look it up, punch it into Google, 1% better every day. James Clear paints a very good picture of what it looks like and how you achieve and how you get on track to be much better than you were yesterday. So I think you just need to do an inventory to really understand and grasp what it is you're looking at.
Drew, for you, what was your one quadrant coming into the IC? Once you define that, do you even remember of kind of like, hey, I was kind of sucking in this area, and what does that look like today?
When I came to the Iron Council, I was lost in so many ways. I was not performing at all. I think I was really good at my business, and I did a really good job there, and I poured everything into that. So maybe on the contribution side, I was really fulfilling my business obligations, but that was killing me everywhere else. My relationship with my wife was terrible. I wasn't showing up as a father. I was fat and unhappy and unhealthy. But I worked 20 hours a day. So that was going well, but was it really going well though? Kip, like, I guess on paper, it looked like it was going well, but I was miserable and I was not in a good place. And joining the Iron Council and really starting to understand what it was that I needed to do to show up in each of those 4 quadrants is what made all the difference in the world for me. And every day I'm a student. Every day I'm learning. I hear from guys in the Iron Council, man, you've been here so long. Haven't you figured it all out? Not even close. Like I still fail. I still need to be held accountable. I still need the proverbial slap on the ass to get moving in a certain direction. But it's just finding the bandwidth, finding the ability to do it, and finding the bandwidth to maximize all of those quadrants is what really, really makes a big difference.
Yeah, Reese, I wish I could remember. In fact, I probably have a spreadsheet battle plan somewhere that I could probably pull up and kind of see the areas I was lacking. But a lot like you, Drew, I think I was doing okay financially. I was working for myself at the time. And so, you know how that is. Sometimes it's like scarcity mentality. It's like market, sell hard, too much work, back and forth. I had that whole roller coaster. kind of happening. I think my relationship with my wife was going okay, probably a little bit more on the negative side. I think we had a lot of disruptions with our teenage son at the time. That was really difficult. I don't know. There's a lot of areas, but maybe something to share, Reese, that kind of is somewhat in line with your question. I have my original battle plan or my original vision breakdown written down from way back when. And I wrote down, I think it was a year out, 3 years out, I think 5, 10, 15 or something like that. And it felt so good to read that. I read that probably about a month ago. No, earlier this year. So it's been a few months. And everything in that 5-year and 10-year already met. And it hasn't even been 10 years. And it actually, like, I felt so proud of myself. I was like, holy crap. Like, I remember this was a pipe dream a little bit, right? It was a stretch. Like, these things would be awesome. And totally there. So a testament to ultimately what we're doing in the IC. Reese, I'd have to look up some old spreadsheets, right, to figure out where I was really sucking. But to your point, Drew, I was probably sucking in all areas and continue to suck in all areas. And it's interesting, like even 6 years ago, I'd say my health wasn't bad. I'd say that I was in a good, healthy state, but I feel like I'm in better shape right now in my life than I was 6 years ago.
Oh my gosh,
I feel
100%.
like 6 years ago, I'd say, hey, I'm working for myself. I'm making good money. Like, I'm killing it. I'm killing a hell of a lot more now than I was 6 years ago. So, I mean, it's a scale, and there's always areas of improving in all of those areas. Andy Collins, what would you do to regain the passion for something you've lost due to your own greed, selfishness, and laziness? Now, Andy, I'm going to call you out here, man. Way to be very detailed and specific on your question. Next time, man, just put it out there. Let us know what it is, because we're going to have to do some random guessing in regards to regaining passion for something, because I kind of feel like if it's a hobby and you don't have the passion for it anymore, who gives a shit? I'm assuming it's something that you should have passion for, that it's probably a relationship or something, so let's maybe lean in that direction, Drew, if that's okay. And Andy, maybe it's applicable, maybe it's not, but how do you regain maybe passion for a relationship or a family member, or resolving something that you lost due to your own greed, selfishness, and laziness?
Yeah, Andy, this one's hard because that's a very broad statement. It could be a variety of things. Like you said, Kip, if it were a hobby, I mean, I've had a million hobbies, you go in and out of those all the time.
Who cares?
But I will say that, regaining passion in a relationship, due to your own self-destruction, I think what you need to do, Andy, is you need to start from scratch, go back to when it was passionate, go back to the simple things you were doing that created that passion in the first place. I think what you'll find oftentimes, and I know it's true for my wife and myself, is that as we get older and we do more and earn more, the small things, they don't have to be more grandiose. They just have to be thoughtful. So if you're trying to regain passion, I'm going on a whim and just using my personal relationship, and so I'll say a romantic relationship, Andy. The little things. Bring home some flowers. Have you read the 5 love languages? Do you know what your spouse or your significant other's love language is? Do more of that. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to cost a bunch of money. It doesn't have to be so grandiose that it takes planning and coordinating. It can just be little things. Grab a dry erase marker and write a note on the mirror. Write her a note, write her a nice text. I don't know. Those simple little things, you'd be surprised how quickly it regains passion in a relationship. I've fallen short here many times, and my wife has mentioned it to me, and she's told me, hey, we really need to focus more on this. I need more of this. You could simply ask this person, what is it that they need more of to pour into? And that will go a long way, and that will reignite that passion. I mean, in my opinion, that'll reignite that passion almost instantly.
I'm totally like intense driving or overmastering feeling or conviction, right? I'm looking up the definition of passion: an outbreak of anger, a strong liking or desire for a devotion to some activity, object, and concept. I like that one, and I really resonates for me anyway. What was the other one? Intense driving or overmastering feeling or conviction. So you want conviction? For me, the thing that resonates is get present to why you should be passionate about it. Like, I think conviction comes from the belief of it, right? Like, and the belief of it, why? Because we're connected to it in a way that we understand the impact of that thing that we're convicted about. And we have confidence in it. A lot of conviction is a result of confidence, and maybe even confidence in the item, but also confidence in yourself. And so I would focus on, how do you regain passion in a particular area? Start building back that confidence. And you do that, right, by taking action. To your point, Drew, what are you doing to create it and build some momentum? The other thing is, I don't know why, it's just clarity of mind, right? And you're already kind of there, Andy. You're saying that you lost something, so you understand you lost it not because it wasn't the right thing. You lost it. Why? Because of greed, selfishness, and laziness. And I'm kind of a stick kind of guy, right? And so I'm kind of like, well, what's the impact if I don't change? What's the probable future if I don't get that back? And that usually fires me up, because it's big. It's really big. I mean, I think we overlook our impact all the time. And I think we need to get way more present to it. I'll give you an example. I was having a conversation with my boys the other day, and we're talking about an individual that is acting like he's 20 years old, and he's a dad, and in his mid 40s, drunk all the time, not living in a healthy way, not being present to kids, having a good time. And it's really at surface level, you're like, hey man, that's not effective for you. And that's not an ideal state. I take that shit to a whole new level. How's that affecting your kids? And how are they going to eat? And what kind of healthy lifestyle are they getting from you, or the lack thereof? And I'm sorry, but if you have young kids and they're overweight and they're living an unhealthy lifestyle, that's on you. That's your fault. There's no like, oh, his baby fat, and stop excusing it, right? People do this shit all the time. They'll excuse it away. Like, oh, well, he's kind of heavy. No, you created a shitty environment, and you're teaching them bad habits because your lack of discipline in regards to how you show up as an adult. That's what's happening. And you not being present to your kids because you want to be a shithead and be drinking all the time. That's on you too. And when your kid internalizes that my dad doesn't love or care for me because your lack of presence in his life, that's on you too. Like, that's what's at stake. So Andy, I'd say, like, this thing that you lack passion, what's the probable future? What's at stake if you don't get your shit back together? And it's way bigger than we realize. As the Stoics say, memento mori, right? Like, getting present to your deathbed. And I think, unfortunately, for a lot of us, we're going to get on that deathbed and we're going to be flooded with regret, flooded with all the things that we know we should have done that we didn't do because we had too much greed, because we were selfish, because we were lazy. Get present to that. Sorry, I kind of got riled up. That conversation made me so mad yesterday. and the unfortunate part, I just want to be really clear. So my daughters have a swear jar for whenever I swear. I owe them quite a bit of money because I don't have one, so I don't always add. So that now that they keep track of how much cash I owe them. And I told my daughters, I'm like, hey, I have to swing to the office to record an episode. And Kika's like, oh, can I watch it? And I'm like, yeah, you can totally watch it. And when I said that, I thought, I'll just make sure I don't swear. Well, I think I just swore like 5 times. So Kika, now I owe you $5 more in the swear jar. My apologies.
I love it. Pay your debts, Kip.
I know. Or just actually honor my word and not swear,
or
like
just
I
don't
tell
swear.
them to,
I mean,
right?
there's
Like
there's that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Kika and Kalani. I'll do better. All right, Alex Sheedy, what factor have you seen that makes the difference between someone exceeding with their goals and their battle planning, etc., and then failing? The factor have you seen that makes a difference between them exceeding and failing in goals?
So this is a good question. So you can make all the plans, you can come up with all the ideas, but the one thing
And
that
the gear.
separates
You have to add the gear in there and all the gear.
You can have all the gear, you can have all the toys, you can have all the things, but you have to actually take action. It's really that simple. And Kip, you just talked about how, your 5 and 10 year goals, you've already exceeded those. And I look at things I've set up for myself and I've exceeded those too. It's because when you make a plan and you work a plan, you get the results every time, every single time. If you make the plan and work the plan, you're going to win the plan. Now that works both ways. You can make a pretty shitty plan and you can work that shitty plan and you can get shitty results. But if you're in the Iron Council and you're learning how to execute properly and how to create effective plans, battle plans, and then you take massive action on those plans every day, you're going to win. That's the recipe. That's all it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, Drew, what would you add is the number one pitfall? So, because we get this too, right? We get the guy, and I love this. So feel free to latch onto this, guys. Plan your work and work your plan, right? Plan your work your plan. Now, guys, do that though, and then they still fail, right? So what's the difference between the guy that creates the plan, he's working the plan, but then he doesn't follow through or falls off the plan? Where do you think that's rooted in?
Well, that's rooted in a plan that isn't well thought out. You have not well come to the conclusion of what really needs to be focused on. We operate at, you guys in the Iron Council, we operate on objectives and tactics. Those things, sometimes your objective is really a tactic to support that objective, or vice versa. You have to really skin it down. You've got to peel this thing back until you can't peel it back anymore. So you've got to get really finite with what that plan looks like. Sometimes, a lot of guys come in the Iron Council, they're on fire, they've been drinking from a fire hose, they've got so much information, they're ready to go. And they create these plans, and the plans are so big and so grandiose that they're going to fail. They're not realistic.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah. There's no way you can keep up that kind of momentum. You're not supposed to. And even if you are, you haven't been doing this long enough to be able to perform like that. And that's not a slight at anybody. That's just, you just haven't been doing, you're new to it. You're green here. You haven't been taking massive action on these kinds of plans for very long. Kip, like you, like me, like Reese, Chris, some of these guys in the Iron Council that just have been doing it a long time. We're just a little further down the path than some of these guys that are just joining our right now. So you've got to work a plan that is very realistic. Now, you can't make it so easy that, of course, there are things you're already doing. That's something too that I tell a lot of guys in the Iron Council. Don't create a battle plan around things that you already do. You already do those things. Those don't count. You need to push yourself a little bit. So you've got to get yourself in a place to where the plan is very workable, but that you can also measure results from as well too, and something that you can keep up with.
Yeah, cool. I like it. The only thing I'd add, and we don't talk about these things as much in the IC, but I'll add them from a leadership development perspective, really from work more than anything. So a couple things, and I think part of this comes back to our response to Andy around conviction. You got to get connected to the plan. Like, why are you doing this plan? Like, the phrase I like to use for guys is vision and kind of their mission. It needs to move, touch, and inspire you. If you're not inspired by it, you're not going to be committed to it, and you're not going to have conviction around it. So make sure that what battle plan, what goals you set for yourself, that you're bought in, that you're fully committed, you're in, and you're willing to grind this thing out to ensure that you stick to the plan and see its results. And it's not, and it has to be stronger, guys. It has to be deeper than like, I don't know about you, but like, I don't know. Like, I want to be in shape because that will be good. No, it's like, I want to look damn sexy with my shirt off. I want the confidence of walking around naked around my house and my wife going, holy crap, he's handsome. Like, it's got to be something stronger than just, I want to be in shape.
Mm-hmm.
So connect to something that moves, touches, and inspires you. So that way you can get behind it. And then, and it's not a hack, but it helps, is a cadence around accountability. And that's what the Iron Council does, right? Is we have these battle plans. I communicate my battle plan to my team lead and the other members of my team. They know what my tactics are. I'm reporting on them on a weekly basis. And what also helps is I'm surrounding myself around like-minded men that are also getting after it. You know how much harder it would be for guys in the IC to be successful if we didn't have those cadences, if we weren't around other individuals. Instead, maybe I was around a bunch of hoo-ha morons that had nothing going on in their lives. What's the probability of me staying on the path in life if I'm surrounding myself around individuals that's not killing me? Man, right. So these things all matter. Who you surround yourself, being really highly connected to the why, if you want to use that term, of why you're doing something, and then having some systems and some cadences in place to build that accountability. Those are all kind of, I know they're a little hacky. Do you have to have those things? Probably not, but man, they certainly help. Anything else to add to that, Drew? I didn't want to get all processy.
No,
but
I think the other thing too that I've noticed in the Iron Council, and something that you have to be very aware of, is as you're working this plan, you also can't be afraid to change your plan. Now, it's not changing your plan because you don't want to do the work. Sometimes as you're putting these plans together, the things just don't work the way you envision them to work. And you'll get better at this, or you're off, or whatever it might be. You'll get better at this the more of these battle plans you do, but don't just stop doing it. Adapt, overcome it, and change the plan to work with what's currently working for you in all your other areas as well. That way you can stay on the path and keep moving it forward.
Totally. Two things came to mind really quick, just to add to it. So I stole this from Jordan Peterson, and I don't remember the context of his share, but he said that his kids, or maybe his clients, they were allowed to change their goal and their plan if the item that they're pivoting to is equally as hard or harder. So maybe that's how you pivot. It's like, oh, you know what? This isn't the right move. Okay, great. But whatever you're going to pivot to has to be equal or harder to do. And that way you ensure that you're not giving yourself an out. Mm-hmm. The other thought that came to mind, and I just lost it actually, now that I think about it. What were you talking about just a second ago?
About changing your plan?
Yeah.
In that context? Yeah, you have to be, I was just saying that you have to be willing, and you have to be able to realize that it is okay to adapt the plan to be more in line with what it is you're currently doing. If you have a huge fitness goal on this plan and you break your foot, you obviously aren't doing that exact same fitness goal. So don't quit the plan, just adapt it to something that works in line with where you're at.
Totally. And Drew, I'm assuming you've done 75 hard.
A few times.
Okay. And we know a bunch of guys who've done it. And it's ironic is what was or at least most of the guys that have shared that with me, the biggest win was the psychological win of sticking with it.
100%.
So remember that too. It's not just the result of the objective, but it's the man that you're becoming by honoring your commitment that you made to yourself. That's the biggest win here, guys, is you outward expression of what's important to you and you honoring that word that you gave to yourself and possibly others. That is so powerful. And sometimes let's be frank, sometimes that should be enough. Sometimes it should be enough. Sometimes the fact that I told Drew I would do it is enough of a reason that I should do it.
Being a man of your word.
Yep. Todd Martinez, what strategies do you use when you feel overwhelmed with more to do than you have time? So strategies to you that you use when you feel overwhelmed with more to do than you have time.
So I analyze what those to-dos are. A great method is like the need versus want method, right? What do you need to do? What do you want to do? Priority list, prioritize it. What has to get done? What things are the priority? Do those things. What things can you focus on at a later date or a later time, or are just what I said, the wants, that aren't going to affect any specific outcome, but they are things that you still should do. And how can you move those things around? Focus on the things that have to get done first, and then the other things, move them to the side. Create a list. Priorities.
I like it. Todd, I'm not saying this about you, because I actually do feel that some of us really do have a time and priority list problem. I think, though, that most guys don't. I actually think that most people that say they don't have enough time have plenty of time. So for those that might fall into that camp, or maybe you're not sure, spend 1 week and then track your entire week in increments of 15 minutes. And at the end of the week, I would say probably 90% of us would find out that we have plenty of time. And it's actually being wasted, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Netflix bending, watching TV, or whatever people do that constantly is a waste of their time. So I would get clear first that, is this really a time and priority issue, or is this just your wasting time doing shit that you shouldn't be doing?
There's so many methods to build these lists out. I mean, you could go with time blocking. I mean, there's so many things you could do to help here. Again, another plug for the Iron Council. A lot of this is discussed inside the Iron Council. A lot of guys come in with these same types of questions and concerns around their days, and there is a ton of insight from all of us about how to help you manage this kind of stuff.
Yeah. But back to summarize what you just said, Drew: prioritize and execute, right? This is a common, what are the laws of combat from Jocko and Leif Babin in Extreme Ownership, is prioritize. I mean, what else can you do? If you have too much stuff to do and you don't have enough time, you don't have a choice. What you do is you need to prioritize and work on the most important items, period.
Right. That's it.
Yeah, it is what it is. Anonymous. So long story short, my friend has been thinking about starting this business idea for about 2 to 3 years now. This business is like a second side to the business that I run right now, like a landscape adding snow plowing to winter as a second service. Would it be messed up if I started doing the business because I had the funds and the time to do it versus he doesn't? Or would I be stepping on his toes and affecting our friendship by doing this?
It's a good question. I like this.
It is a good question too. I actually have this has happened actually. So,
look, there are a lot of good ideas out there, but good ideas are just that, good ideas. They're not actionable items. There's a lot to this. If this friend approached you for guidance on how to start this, and you have agreed to help this person and figure out how to make this happen, and then you go in and take the idea and just run with it, that's pretty shitty. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know if he's
are
just
they
not
ever
taking
going to act on
action,
it?
and are they going to act on it? And if you are already well equipped and able to do so, part of me thinks run with it. There's a lot to this that we just don't know, Kip, that's hard to speak on appropriately. But I think if you're asking this question at the root of this question, you know the answer to this question. I think it's as simple as that. You wouldn't be asking. So in my, the way I see it, and the way just from hearing Kip read this question, you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah, agreed. Now, a couple things. This could be a conversation. Like, we might be looking into it. You might be looking into it too much. And maybe you talk to your friend and you're like, hey, like, here's the deal. Like, I love your idea. I think it's a great idea. I can execute on it. And my fear is that you're never going to execute on it. And I can, and I'm like, hey, I want to go on this bad boy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you care? Right. And have the conversation with them. I mean, it's worth the conversation. And your guys' relationship would probably be better off if you did have this conversation, right? Because this could be slightly uncomfortable. Here's another consideration is if the friend goes, hey, no, you're right, man, I'm dropping the ball. I don't have the funds. You go ahead and do it, right? There might still be a little bit of like, damn it, I wish it was me. And Drew's kind of running with my dream a little bit. And, and I'm going to have to chalk it up. What Drew should do in that example, involve me.
Mm-hmm.
Involve me in it. Because let's be frank, a lot of this isn't about just cash and having a successful business idea. Some of it is kind of a little bit of a baby in your mind. And maybe that's how you approach it. Hey man, why haven't you taken this action? You don't have the funds or whatever. Okay, let's go in on it together then. Let's do it together. Like there's other ways of doing this than it's just not with an abundance mentality versus a scarcity mentality. And maybe you guys do it together. This literal scenario has happened to me and my wife multiple times. and the part that probably bothered us the most was they didn't include us. Like we just wanted to be included. You know what I mean? And for us, it wasn't that we didn't have the finances to pull it off. It was more of like, it wasn't a high enough priority to act on. So, but it was kind of our baby idea, right? And so it would have been nice, one, for that conversation just to happen of like, hey, are you going to do this? Because I like the idea that we had or whatever, and I want to execute on it. How do I help you do it? Or how do we do this together? And that would have meant so much. So I don't know. Consider those ideas. All right. We're going to hop over to Facebook. Dakota Wyndham. What are some ways to make the most of being a stay-at-home dad and overcoming the stigma that goes with it? This is good.
Yeah. So my wife is home with our kids. She's a stay-at-home mom, and she has the most thankless, selfless job. And we also homeschool our kids, so she's also a teacher. So her breaks are far and few between. But as I've never been a stay-at-home dad, I've always gone and worked and run my own businesses. I think the best thing you can do, Dakota, is just show up every day, man, and be the best version, be the best dad you can be to your kids, be the best husband you can be to your wife, and just show up every day and just be consistent, take action. The stigma, I'm not going to belittle it that there is no stigma. I don't know. For sure.
What are you going to do about it? You're going to run around trying to change people's opinion of you?
Who cares, dude? Just show up every day and do, your kids are so lucky to have a dad at home. That's so awesome to be able to do that. So I would just continue doing what you're doing, show up every day, and just be consistent with the action you're taking.
Yeah, that's a key thing, I think, is just kill it. Be awesome at it. Bring those masculine typical traits of structure to the home and do it your way and just get after it and do an amazing job. And guess what? You're not going to, who gives a crap about what other people think from a stigma perspective? And get your band together. Well, who are some other dads? What are they doing? Get around those guys, right? That's going to help create some momentum around what you're doing. Dr. Warren Farrell, his book, The Boy Crisis, has an entire section in that book that talks about this very scenario, because as the pendulum swings and more women go into the workforce, right, this becomes more of a probability. And you're right, without a doubt, there's a stigma. But there's also a stigma on the feminine side way too often that you're not fulfilling your full potential as a woman if you don't get a job. So welcome to the party, I guess. Like, who gives a crap about stigmas? You rise up, you show people how it's done, and you do an amazing job. Who cares?
100%.
I like it.
Love it.
All right. Dawson Canoes. What do you do if you are struggling to move on from a crisis, even after the danger has passed? I'm not sure if I follow that question, Drew, as much, but
again, very broad to really identify. I guess a crisis and a danger. I mean, it sounds fairly serious.
Like a crisis happened that was dangerous, obviously,
right. And it's still affecting you,
and it's no longer a threat, but it's still affecting you emotionally.
So was it Dawson? Is that the name? Dawson?
Yes, sir.
Dawson, look, man, without more information, it's hard to offer some insight here. I would say it sounds serious, or it sounds like it was serious to me. I would seek some help. Maybe do you need to seek a professional, some therapy around this? There is also the method of facing this type of thing head on and getting more experienced in being able to defend yourself or help yourself, if that is part of the situation. It's hard to say. I mean, I feel like I'm just kind of shooting from the hip on this, but Dawson, I would say if you need help, brother, seek it out, and get a professional's input on how to navigate this. It sounds like maybe there's some PTSD or something along the lines going on here. So definitely seek some help, man. And it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah. And the only thing that crosses my mind, and I think it transcends all things, right? Whenever we deal with any form of trauma, whether it's minor or major, it doesn't matter. Trauma is trauma for whoever it is. There's always a gap between the event and our emotional response, right? And I would try to get present to that. So get present to your emotions, right? I feel a situation occurs and I get fired up emotionally, like pause and go, okay, wait, where is this coming from? Why do I feel this way? Like ask the questions. When I think about, even in a very basic way, if I get in arguments with my spouse and I'm emotionally charged, rarely is it really what we're talking about. Let's be frank here, right? No one gets mad at dishes, right? No one gets mad or emotionally charged at anything. Like I even bring this up even from a work perspective. If we have a client that if it never happens, but if we get a client that's upset, they're not upset that we went over budget. They're not upset that the tech isn't exactly what they want. That's not why people get upset. They get emotionally charged because usually how it relates to them as an individual. So if we go over on a project, I'll get emotionally charged, not because we went over on the project. I'll get emotionally charged because it makes me look bad. And now I'm concerned about the trust and my reputation with other people. Like there's something bigger always whenever emotion is brought up. It's not the dishes. It's the lack of feeling respected. It is a lack of order in my life because it feels chaotic because I was out of integrity all day long. And now I'm looking for something to be ideal in my life and simplistic, right? Like it's always something more. And we'll never be able to deal with the something more as long as we hold on to the idea that like, well, I'm upset because of Drew. Oh, I'm upset because of this. I'm upset. No, none of us are upset at any of those things. It's our interpretation of them that is causing discomfort and emotional response. And being present to the interpretation that we're creating is the secret sauce. And so as much as we can pause and get present of like, okay, wait a second. When this occurs, why am I triggered here? And what am I making it mean? And how does it relate to me? And then own it. And now I can go back to Drew and say, Drew, dude, I'm out of line. I'm sorry. Earlier today, I totally got upset when you said XYZ. I interpret it as you didn't give a shit. In reality, I just realized that you were busy or whatever. My apologies for lashing out. That is what we need to constantly be doing whenever there's emotional response to things. Now, I don't want to diminish anything what Drew said. Seek help, right? Like if this is an issue, it's preventing you from being effective, you might need professional help, and we're obviously not professionals, so seek that out. But with that said, though, man, I love this aspect of the Iron Council because, Drew, how many times I feel that guys would we can say things because we're not the professional. And because I've had this kind of conversation, even with a psychiatrist, right? And they don't dare say anything, right? Because they're like, well, this is my profession. And if I give bad advice, I could get lawsuit or whatever. Like Drew and I could just sit on the call and say, dude, man up and stop being an idiot. Right. And what's the repercussions of those statements? So we can maybe be a little bit more transparent and honest than maybe a professional can be in a setting like this, but seek that help if necessary. All right. Anything else to add to that, Drew, or any disclaimer?
Nope.
Okay. John Barbie, if you could only have one piece of equipment to work out with, what would it be? Really important question here. One piece of equipment.
It would be my weight vest.
Yeah. You use that a lot. Like you'll ruck on it, pull-ups, all kinds, push-ups.
Run with it. Yep. Everything. It's really, I think I've seen the biggest change, the most endurance, feel the best, and just all around best workout with that weight vest.
Cool. I don't know, man. Maybe some 50-pound dumbbells or something that I could just throw around. Maybe kettlebells. Maybe if I had to pick one, maybe a pair of kettlebells. Okay. Charles Logan, how do you safely handle conflict at work, online, or at home? Mostly wondering about doing so without devolving into shouting, throwing, and hitting. that went from handling conflict to like not hurting people and causing damage. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds.
Don't do that. Yeah, don't hit people.
I would.
That's not.
I would say
ideal.
let's not punch holes in walls and hit people. And I don't even know where to go with this. Handling conflict at work. I mean, it sounds like there is a major breakdown in communication, and it sounds like it's been happening for a very long time. I mean, this sounds extreme to me, and this sounds like it needs to be addressed. Again, very little details here, but man, you got to get back on the communication train here and start talking about what's really going on and figuring some things out. Otherwise, it sounds like maybe it's time to consider a change of job and get yourself into a more healthy work environment would be the two things I could rattle off here.
Like, especially like if the other people are shouting, yelling, and throwing and hitting. Yeah. Good point. I'll share maybe an example, Charles, that might help. It doesn't include shouting, throwing, and hitting. It's more of the corporate PC version of those things, right? Undermining the chain of command, communicating up the chain, back talking, right, of other individuals. That's kind of what we more common see in the public sector and in the workspace. So I had a team lead from another team. A member of my team wasn't pulling his weight. And it eventually got to a point where this individual from another team was like, hey, this is a problem. And so emailed me and then emailed my boss with this like literally like corporate electronic courage paragraph of, I did this, and then here's the timestamps, and you know what I mean? Like all this evidence, right? All this evidence of why he's right. And of course, me and the owner like immediately kind of nipped it in the butt, right? It's like, no, that's not how we work here. And so the proper approach in that scenario is, did you go talk to the guy that's dropping the ball? And did we, when I say talk, do we learn why he's dropping the ball? What's going on? He's a human. Do you think he's intentionally going out of his way to make sure he doesn't do what you need? They think it's malicious. And in most cases, it's not. So then the question is then why did he drop the ball? Oh, wait, you didn't know he had 30 other projects? Oh, you didn't know that things at home are like falling apart and he's really struggling? Like, you didn't know all these other things? You need to understand what's going on. and then find unified alignment. So Drew, if you and I were struggling with something, let's say we're in disagreement, right? To almost to the extent, maybe we'll get to shouting, maybe not throwing necessarily, but we're shouting because we're handling a conflict. Then back it up. So if our conflict is here, back it up and keep backing up until we have alignment. And so Drew and I, let's say which I'm trying to think of a good example here. You and I are conflicted about, and we're having a conflict around something within the Iron Council and how we handle things. And you're like, Mighty Networks is awesome platform. I'm like, no, it should be Microsoft Teams because I'm a Microsoft Teams guy. And we have this debate all out. I know I'm right. You know you're right. We have complete disagreement and we're kind of frustrated and upset. Now, first off is, why are you upset? Does that have anything to do with what we're talking about? No. It means that I don't feel heard, right? I think I'm right. And the fact I might be wrong hurts my ego. That's where the emotions come from. So get connected to the emotional response that you're having, and then back it up to unified alignment. And Drew and I, in this example, could line back up to the mission of the Iron Council. What are we trying to do in the IC? Equip men with the tools, resources, and processes necessary for them to leave a lasting impact in their personal lives and their families and communities. Are you in agreement with that, Drew? Yes, you are. I am as well. Okay. So we're not disagreeing about our mission and purpose as an organization. We're just seeing the approach as being different. And when you can back up to alignment, then you can kind of get connected back to the desired outcome and realize like, okay, these are just different ways to try to get to the same spot. And the weight of me being right or him being right kind of gets diminished a little bit, because what's right is that we're equipping men, right? And that we're focused on the right mission. That's what's right. How we get there is just artistic, different approach. Mm-hmm. And then we can discuss and debate it and keep our emotions in check.
Sounds good to me.
All right. And we don't disagree often. I just use that as an example.
Never, Kip.
All right. All right. Ryan Ziola. Sorry, Ryan. All right. Ryan, so you gave a big background here, right? So like, brand new listener, 30-year-old dropout, owns his own business. You sound like you're killing it, Ryan, too, right? Like 12 wholesale accounts, multiple locations, donut shop in a prime location. Like, he's making progress. It sounds like he's doing a great job. He says his question is, with expanding the brand, I can't always be there holding hands. What's your first move with creating an environment to have employees that generate revenue when you or one of your managers is not around, to keep the momentum and that the expectations are high, right? So how do he's kind of babying this thing. That's how I'm seeing this, right? He's killing it. Why? Because of him. Mm-hmm. And now he's getting to a size here where he can't be at all places, right? And really, what's that first move in creating the environment to allow growth?
There's a couple of things to unpack here, Ryan. Ryan, so you've got to. It sounds like you've grown this thing to a solid place, but you've really got to push through. So you got to trust the process. You got to trust that you built the right systems. You put the right systems in place. So you got to trust that process. You've got to be willing to take the risk. You got to jump. You got to jump through. And then you also have to trust and ensure that you're putting the right people in the right types of places, the right types of positions. Kip, we touched on that a little bit ago. You got to have the right people in place. So maybe you need another manager or two. Maybe you need to ensure that those people are performing and showing up at the right times in the right places. I would just say, again, I'll reiterate, trust the process. You got to take the risk. You got to push through. And you got to see, it sounds like you see what will be rewarding on the other side. You just haven't quite pushed through to that side yet. So push through and just really rely on your team. You put them in place. It sounds like you mentioned a manager or two, rely on them. and show them, lead from the front, show them that you're taking a risk and that you're really trying to grow this thing. And you'll be amazed at how they perform for you if you've really entrusted in them and have faith in them as well.
Yeah, I like that. Here's a couple thoughts to consider. What you don't, well, I have my opinion of what the ideal state is. So Ryan, take it for what it's worth. People are going to approach this differently because they might say, well, this line of workers are, it's not professional services, Kip. So you can't expect, this kind of level of professionalism from your employees. I don't buy that. So I don't care if it's a donut shop. I don't care if it's a garbage collection company or an IT consulting firm. This is my take of how it should be. Do not lose trust. Do not lose the speed of trust. So the question then is, back to your point, Drew, you need to make sure that you're hiring the right people. And the kind of people that you want are people that are self-directed in regards to the desired outcomes of the company, period. That will own the problem, right? So I'm running a donut shop. I see an issue, default aggressive. They're addressing it. They're self-directed. They don't need to be micromanaged by you. And they have your blessing to execute and do what's right for the company. Now, are they going to make mistakes? They do. Those are called investments from your perspective. But the last thing that you want to do is be so stringent in your process. So make sure you do blah, 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 blah. And now I'm just a cog in the wheel. I just work at this company. I'm not empowered. I'm micromanaged by you. You don't believe in me, and you're going to dampen any good employees. And then you're going to have to perpetually hire morons that will just follow the process because you're treating them like morons by being too defined in regards to what exactly needs to happen. So get people that will take extreme ownership and are self-directed. Now, here's the key. For me to be self-directed in executing in my job function, I need to know what success looks like. It has to be super clear to me. So what is the desired outcome, right? And you got to set those expectations. This is what's expected for you to keep, selling donuts when I'm not there. What does that mean? That means 10,000 donuts a day, right? That's what that means. So you need to have metrics that makes it very clear for me as an employee of what killing it looks like. What does high success look like? And then you work with me and make sure that you have proper transfer of ownership where you don't because here's the other thing about trust that I find is really interesting. And this is like a new thing for me that I learned literally over the last 6 months. Drew, I can go to you. So let me pause. Sorry. Two things. There's a character of trust, and then there's competency of trust. Okay. If I went to Drew, and I'm not beating up on you, Drew, but I'm assuming you're not trained in jiu-jitsu on a regular basis. So you don't consider yourself a jiu-jitsu practitioner. Is that fair to say? Okay.
Correct.
So I want to go to Drew and say, hey, Drew, I trust you, man. I trust your character. You're an amazing guy. I trust you to execute and teach a jiu-jitsu seminar tomorrow. Now, Drew could rise to the occasion and teach, but he's probably going to fail. And then what happens to my trust in Drew? It gets diminished, and I don't trust Drew. I set that all up. That was my bad, not his, because he didn't have the competence, right, to be able to do it successfully. So you need to make sure that where you have these employees that you need to have them rise up and be empowered to execute, that they're capable of executing. Otherwise, they will fail. And that's not on them, by the way. That's on you for putting the right person, not putting the right person in the right role. So make sure these guys are there. They're self-directed. They have metrics. They know what success looks like. And then you need to work on decentralized command. And part of that in decentralized command or the transfer of ownership is this person ready for that ownership? And do I have a cadence to support them and make sure they have what they need to be successful in that job? Good.
Good.
All right. Adam Sharp. Hey, Kip and Ryan, one question I have to ask is, how do you talk about toxic masculinity when other people believe it's a real thing? So that's really the question here. And then he gives some feedback, right? He has some guys that, I'm just paraphrasing for Adam because it's kind of a long question, but how do we do this, right? How do we have a conversation with people that believe toxic masculinity is like a real thing, and assuming that you don't, Drew. So let's clarify that too. But how do you handle that conversation?
Well, I really don't engage in that conversation with people that buy in or believe that in toxic masculinity. There's nothing to be ashamed of being a strong man. I don't know. I don't really. I wish I had a better answer. There's nothing to run from. We show up and we do what we know how to do, how to be a strong, able-bodied, willing man, who can be loving and endearing, but is also ruthless and violent and will provide and protect for his family. I don't know. This is a hard question for me because it's just not a conversation that I engage in. I'm proud of who I am. I'm not embarrassed by it. Those that think men are toxic, I don't know how well that works for them when strong, willing men show up for them day in and day out to provide and protect and preside over them.
Or
And
when
you
they
shouldn't
need
be
it?
embarrassed by it
Yeah.
when they need it and when they need it. Whether that's through,
Right.
and don't get me wrong, whether that's through law enforcement, military, first responders, there's so many ways that strong men show up every day. And we see it time and time again. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's nothing to shy away from. And if you don't like it, then I feel bad for you.
Yeah. There's two things here, Drew, that I think that I'd like to dive in more. And I think the one is, you know, when one person says toxic masculinity, is that what we're saying is toxic? Like, is it even the same thing, right? Or they're just saying, oh, like the alpha male asshole kind of guy, we call that toxic masculinity. Okay, great. But not masculinity itself is not toxic, right? So we're just saying those guys are kind of a toxic version of it. And they're like, yeah, oh, okay, then maybe we're saying the same thing, right? So there is a little bit of a clarity, I guess you could seek after trying to make sure or understand when they say toxic masculinity, what does that really mean? But I think what you said, Drew, which is kind of not related to the question, but I think is the bigger important thing, is what I heard you say is, I don't engage in a conversation to try to convince someone something that they believe. That's not what we do. So why don't you talk about that more? Because I think that's the bigger thing here is, well, why? Why are you trying to convince someone that is passionate about something else, right? And kind of the tugboat versus the lighthouse mentality and the power of when to have conversation, when not, if you want to dive into that. Because I think that's kind of the real value add to this question.
Everything is so polarizing, right now. I mean, it has been for some time, and then all the current political climate and COVID and all these things just seem to really up the ante, thanks to the propaganda and the media that really just drives this stuff through the roof. But when you go outside and you talk to your neighbors, you realize that we're all on the same page. For the most part, 90+% of us, that's that teeny little percent, this person that they're talking about. It's that teeny percentage that seems to make the most noise and really gets their voice amplified for one reason or another. But when you go out and talk to your neighbors and your fellow men and everybody that you speak with, it's amazing how similar we all really are, and how we really just want to be able to show up every day and be a good person. All the other nonsense and noise, that's all it is. It's just nonsense and noise. Why are you trying to engage with someone that is clearly doesn't want to see or is open-minded to see the big picture, see what it is you're trying to explain? You're not going to change their mind. They've already made up their mind. Yeah, Kip, I don't know. I just have a hard time engaging in conversation that is, you're just being set up to fail. The person doesn't want to see or realize any positive attributes in anything. It's just like they've locked into this one negative experience. And look, I'm not ignorant. I realize that, yes, there are some outliers here that do portray some of these things, this proverbial toxic masculinity, or whatever it is you want to call it. There might be one asshole out there that really shines through on this one thing, but being a strong man, there's nothing toxic about that. Being proud of your masculinity, there's nothing toxic about that. Yeah, that's what I got.
You said something that like, because I want to provide clarity. You said that, what's the language that you used? Why would I do something, set myself up for failure? I want to be really clear. It's not because Drew doesn't have a good argument that thus he would fail. We hold on to this mentality way too often, that we think that if Drew and I were in a disagreement, that if I come up with the best sound bites and the best debate, that Drew's going to be emotionally charged, get angry with me, and then once I drop some solid knowledge, he's going to go, oh, you know what? You're right, Kip. I'm wrong. I changed my mind. No, it's out of intelligence that we realize humans don't work that way. You argue with me and I'm emotionally charged, I double down. I'll avoid all logic for the sake of being right, because I got to protect my ego. Most of what people do on a day in and day out basis, and really, like, guys, really, like, consider this. You wake up in the morning and you walk the way you walk, you drive the car you drive, you dress the way you dress, you have the conversations you have, all mostly driven by trying to look good and the avoidance of looking bad. It is at the center of what you do on a regular basis. That is what humans are doing time in and time out all the time. And we're not going to look bad just because of logic. That's why people lie. That's why they smoke in mirrors. That's why they'll start attacking character and everything else, because they have no desire to just go, oh, you know what? Let me check my ego. I'm wrong. You're right, Drew. My bad. That's not how humans work. And most importantly is, do you want someone, like, I even latch onto this quite a bit, like even with my kids. It's like, do I want them to do something because I coerce them, because I harass them into doing something? Or do I want them to do it because they're convicted to the reason behind it? So I never, zero, will have a political debate with anybody about anything. And I love to have those conversations. I'll talk psychology and personal improvement and leadership and politics all day long. I love those conversations. But when I'm around people and they want to debate, I have no desire to, because I understand human nature well enough to know that's a waste of their time and mine. Now, if Drew came to me and we saw things differently and said, hey, Kip, I want your opinion about something, I'm down. Now I'm open to having a conversation, right? But if he's sitting at the dinner table and he's running his mouth about blah, 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 and I'm like, he's totally off base. He's off base. Be confident with the way you see things. And me running my mouth and getting in a debate with him is not going to help. It's just because that's not how humans work. So don't lose your humanity and think everyone's just going to be logical and you're going to be a superhero, throw out some serious, Ben Shapiro knowledge, and everybody, all of a sudden, everyone's going to be a conservative, right? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. They need to come to that conclusion on their own.
Correct.
Right. And the best
100%.
we can do is share when they ask and be great shining examples. So you don't like, I don't know, someone liking about or having an issue with toxic masculinity, then be the prime example of masculinity and show up in a wicked, powerful way and just be the proof in the pudding of what it is to be masculine. All right. How are we doing on time, Drew? Do you got a couple more questions?
I got a couple more of me. Let's do last two. Let's call two.
All right. How do you deal? There's three. We'll rapid fire these ones. I won't talk as much as I normally do. All right, Samuel, how do you deal with a mother-in-law who is very opinionated about everything in your life, in your wife's life? Do you set boundaries, or do you let your wife set the boundaries? This doesn't affect me so much as it does my wife, but when it affects my wife, it spills over into both of our lives.
I think he answered his own question. Boundaries are key. His wife should set the boundaries with her mother. And if that's not working, or it needs to be further along, then you need to set some boundaries too. End of story.
Yeah. And if you set those boundaries, do it with your wife. You guys have to unify front. You go set some boundaries on behalf of your wife because you're superior and she's inferior, and mother-in-law like doesn't hear it from her. No, that's a disaster.
Not gonna work.
That's not gonna work either. So do it together if you're going to do those boundaries. Yeah. Okay. Are we good with that one?
Good.
All right. Rudy Van de Viver, the struggle and resolution to raising a youth that is babied and spoiled, and wanting to bring him into the world of responsibility, work, effort, honor, doing what's right, even when it's difficult or inconvenient. So the struggle and the resolution of raising our young youth that's been babied and spoiled.
I don't know if he's speaking generally or of his children that are babied and spoiled. So you got to take an inventory of what's going on at home currently and what might need to change in order to give these kids a little tough love. I mean, of course, Kip, you have kids, I've got kids. You want to, you want to spoil them and take good care of them and give them an amazing life. But my wife and I discuss this often. We want to make sure that we also are setting them up for success in the future. And having them experience some difficult hardships and have to push themselves takes, they need to lose in sports, and they need to get, they need to experience what that loss is like. My son, he finished his season of lacrosse in the spring, and they made it to the championships, and they played so great all season. And a lot of us thought they were going to really take it far in the championships, and they got smoked. And it was hard. It was hard to see my son upset, and he had some tears, and he cried about it. But it was good for him. It was good for him to experience that loss and understand that they probably need to try a little harder if they lost because they didn't put all the effort forth. And that's good for him. So I think you need to take an inventory and really understand what it is that's happening on the home front, and then start making your pivots there.
Totally. I think the number one contributing factor to youth being babied, spoiled, and all the other, terms that we could use is they were never taught delayed gratification. Period. They've never experienced what it's like to, and I'm projecting here. I never wanted to work on the farm, never. But man, I can tell you how good it felt at the end of the day. Man, it felt good. Felt good to see that field. Felt good knowing that we got all that irrigate. It felt good to delay, grind, and end the day with huge amount of work done. Most kids will never experience it because they never had to go to the grind to experience what it's like to have delayed gratification in their effort. And why? What are you competing with? Instant gratification. On the phone all day long, instant gratification. Entertainment on my TV, instant gratification. Video games, instant gratification. Candy, instant gratification. Everything is instant. That's the world we live in. You want something, I want it now. Amazon can't deliver it in today or tomorrow. It's all about living in the moment and in getting, not living in the moment. That's not the right term, but being gratified instantly. And that's what you're fighting against. So get mindful of all those things that are giving instant gratification. Look for scenarios to create delayed gratification so they can see what it feels like to grind and do something hard and then have the gratification afterwards. What's crazy about this isn't just these are tactics of human behavior. We're talking chemicals here, right? There's science around this. Do your research, get connected to the science of what's happening in the human mind, what dopamine we're getting from what, and what you're fighting against. For instance, the dopamine hit that a kid gets from playing a video game, guess what? How that compares to the dopamine they get from mom and dad doing, "You did a good job, Jimmy." Doesn't even compare, man. Usually that used to be good enough, right? I felt good that I helped mom and dad and they're so proud of me. So I'm going to do that again. That's a chemical reaction. The amount of chemicals they're getting from their phone and from video games doesn't even compare You're fighting against an uphill battle. So be mindful of what we're also exposing our kids to as part of this process. A couple resources. The Boy Crisis, Warren Farrell, he has a whole chapter about this as well. And The Coddling of the American Mind, I think, is probably one of the most insightful books around how this started. Like, how do we get into this victim woke mentality culture and where it originated from? And it's very, very insightful. So The Coddling of the American Mind, I don't remember the authors, but just search for that title. Those will be good resources for you. All right, last question. Dusty Perkins, Ryan, I've always struggled to communicate my feelings, ideas, wants, and information. Rudy, that just sounds like you're struggling communicating anything. I'm teasing.
Yeah.
So feelings, ideas, wants, and information. Information pretty much summarized. I have a problem with just communication as a whole. It was a leading contributor to my marriage ending. See, now I'm just being a dick because now you went all like, sad here and I'm making funny. All right, I'm sorry. My marriage ending. I want to learn how to better communicate these things, but also how to communicate in a way that hopefully a future spouse understands, but she also feels heard, understood, and seen. I appreciate any thoughts and references such as books, podcasts, and other materials that could help learn to do this better. So communicate better, but communicate in a way, like he's assuming a dichotomy here, I think, but communicate in a way that a future spouse still feels heard, understood, and seen at the same time.
Yeah, Dusty, that's tough because you don't know what this future spouse is what they're going to be like, their personality, how they're going to communicate, so on and so forth. I would definitely, if you're not in the Iron Council, I would definitely join the Iron Council. Tons of great insight in there. There's tons of great resources. The 5 Love Languages, I mentioned it earlier, great book to read. Understand what your significant other's love language is. That doesn't directly correlate to communication, but in a lot of ways it does, because you know how they respond to how they respond. So that's a great resource. And I would take a self-inventory here, Dusty. Understand, what is it you are looking for? What is it you want and need in a relationship? How do you like to communicate? Do you journal? Do you write things down? Why don't you start there and better understanding how it is you
work
communicate.
through your thoughts better.
Work through your thoughts a little better. It sounds like that is probably what you need and what is missing in order for you to show up better this next go around. I'm sorry it didn't work out on your first marriage, but it sounds like you really need to do some self-evaluation here to really understand what it is you want. You need to be the best version of yourself so you can show up and be the best for someone else. If you can't be the best version of yourself, there is no way you are going to be able to show up for anybody else. So I would do that self-inventory and really get right with yourself before you even consider pursuing another relationship.
Yeah. And I'm making a big assumption here, Dustin, but in your question, or Dusty, in your question, you're kind of like, how do I become a better communicator? But in a way where my spouse feels heard. Those things are not opposites. Mm-hmm. In fact, they can almost be unrelated to each other. And so let me explain that, because I think what you might be saying is that if in an argument with my spouse, well, I want to be heard and I want to communicate. So I'm going to communicate, but what I'm communicating is opposite of how she saw the situation. And so then she doesn't feel heard because I don't feel the same way she does. And now it's a her or I thing. So I want to be, so assuming that's the case, let me provide this suggestion. One, we need to let go of right and wrong when we talk about communication with another individual. Right? If Drew and I were like, no, the best color is red. I'm just snagging your color shirt here. Best color is red. My best color is green, and we could debate. Well, is that true? No, it's not true. Drew's just telling me what he thinks, right? And so when you're in an argument with your spouse, listen, and listen from the perspective of not is she right or wrong, but she's sharing how she feels. Period. Doesn't matter. Oh, I think you're an asshole. No, I'm not. No, actually, the correct way of listening to that is, I think you're an asshole. Really? You feel that way? I do. Why? What is it that I do that you interpret it as being a jerk so I can understand you? But we typically don't do that, right? We like argue, no, I'm not, or whatever. It's like, it's because we're not listening. Listen to what they're saying and understand their point of view. Now, with that said, I can ask those questions. Well, Drew, why do you feel this way about me? What is it that I do that causes you to feel that way? Interesting. I understand. Where's that rooted in? Is there other times that I showed up this way that might cause that same level of interpretation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And then I could say, do you mind if I share my interpretation of how that situation went down? And here's the most powerful thing. Share it from the perspective of what you're owning, and that is your emotion, not projecting on someone. So don't do the you're always or all that, or you are, none of that, right? It's like, hey, honey, when you did X, I interpret that as whatever. And whether right or wrong, it kind of makes me feel this way. And then I overreact or whatever. So own your emotions, communicate the scenario so you can address it, but you're communicating your interpretation most of the time. And you're understanding her interpretation most of the time, because after all, that's really what most of our life is full of anyway. Not truths of right and wrongs, but interpretations of situations. And understand her interpretation, and you will understand her better. Cool.
Rock on.
All right. Anything else? You want to wrap up? Anything before we wrap up, Drew, from your perspective?
No, I think you hit that nail on the head. I think both of the insight that we offered is what Dusty could use to hopefully help him move forward. That self inventory is going to be a big deal here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that on our questions today, right? Self-awareness of your emotional state, conviction around what you're doing seem to be really consistent across the board as well. Here's the deal. I'm here. Drew's here. Why are we here? Why is the Iron Council? Why is the Order of Man around? Because we're committed to the desired outcome of us rising up and becoming better men, but also standing for other men to do the same. So if you're listening to this, if this resonated, reach out to Drew and I, let us know how it went. Give us some feedback. I loved your answer earlier, Drew, about your battle plans. Like, and I'm still growing, right? I'm still progressing, and we all are. None of us are perfect, of course. And we have as much failures as you guys, and that we are constantly working on at the same time. And so band with us, help us rise up by you rising up. Join us on the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/orderman, and then to learn more about the Iron Council or to sign up for the Iron Council on the 15th of this month, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council and get signed up. I don't have any other updates. Of course, all our Order of Man events are all sold out. I mean, they were sold out a month after the event started. So that's not going to happen. So, and their waiting list, I think, for like the main event is like hundreds of people. So yeah, you guys aren't getting in. But we'll communicate when that opens back up. So stay connected to Mr. Mickler as well, at Ryan Mickler, whether on Twitter and Instagram, to make sure that you're aware of when we start new events so you can sign up as fast as possible. And of course, for your latest Order of Man swag, go to store.orderofman.com. Drew, thank you so much. Thank you guys
Always a
for
pleasure,
submitting
Kip.
questions. And until Friday field notes, take action and become the man you were meant to be.